Hello. I don't know if you're on your computer.
I should probably unmute myself over here.
You are on your computer. Let me put unless you want to do cameras, I was gonna put something up. Do you just want me to use your profile picture?
You can just use profile picture. I'm streaming on my channel as well, and I don't have two cameras.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So I'm not going to be able to broadcast without doing like a screen grab or something janky like that.
True, that works for me. So I will just do that. Ooh, I can do here. I like the one from your header. The face. Yes.
It's the face of a creepy camp counselor approaching me.
Yes. Good call, baby bird. Perfect. Okay, so as I put that there, introduce yourself to the crew here.
Sure thing. This is actually not my first time on your show.
I know.
The first time was a while ago when you did the 24-hour charity stream.
Yeah. Which was a good time. Appreciate you keeping me awake.
for about an hour or two. That said, how's it going, everybody? My name is Suris. If you're watching over on my channel and you don't know who I am, I want to know what weird world you're in. You've jumped through it. You've jumped through a time anomaly, and now we're here. But if you're on Jake's chat and you don't know who I am, one, your life is probably better for it. But two, I do atheist, skeptic, and political content. Generally, lefty sphere type stuff. A lot of social advocacy. I want to say social justice advocacy, but I feel like there's going to be somebody from Kiwi Farms who's just going to hear that from a mile away like Superman and go, the SJWs, they're grouping. So
we do that sometimes. We do group.
I mean, it's literally called solidarity, right?
Yeah. What's a group of SJWs called? What are we called when we all get together and they all get mad? Like a murder? Still a murder? Like a crime?
I don't think it's a murder. I know for Karens, it's a privilege of Karens.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
I'm trying to think of what it would be.
A collective?
For us. Would it be a fedora of SJW?
Hell yeah. Okay. One fedora. And then that can be broken down into further subcategories of trilbies and beanies. Yeah, depending on how you go.
Oh no, not beanies. Those got appropriated by somebody who calls himself ostensibly on the left.
We will take it back from him, okay?
But then his shiny head will show everybody exactly how balding he is.
Hey, it's not his fault he doesn't have the sex. It's everybody else's, okay? That's amazing. What an amazing take someone has had in their life. They're like, of course it's not me.
It's just like freaking Paul Joseph Watson freaking out about Lauren Southern coming back and going, do you think with my perfect white Aryan genes I did not actually have the sex with her? It's not the genetics we're worried about.
Wait, did he brag about having sex with Lauren Southern?
Yes, on Twitter. No. He literally, the exact words he used were, do you think someone as handsome as me has not been inside her?
Wow.
Just like, okay, dude. I think I can actually send it to you real quick. Let me just Google Paul Joseph Watson simping for Lauren Southern.
He did a very similar thing with Anthony Fantano, friend of the show, where he goes, I am much more handsome than you. Like, debate me.
I saw that.
Like, it was really weird.
I saw the stream of people responding to that going, I'm much more like literally just copy pasting that to him. And it is wonderful. Now I think Vosh actually has the screenshots from that. He literally has a video called Paul Joseph Watson as a mental breakdown with just simp in big letters on there.
Yeah, he's a strange guy. I wonder what it's like day to day to be Paul Joseph Watson. Do you think it's like really stressful? I feel like it's stressful.
So you know those memes that have the like a day in the life of a Marxist. Yeah. Wake up, read the Communist Manifesto, eat cereal, but without like the little like just super stereotyping every single hour of your day. We could make one of those for Paul. Just like
probably wouldn't be that far off though.
Wake up, scream at globalists for an hour.
Globalists.
Remember, so that's 9 a.m. Then 10 a.m. Remember that globalist is actually an anti-Semitic term. 11 o'clock, realize that his base doesn't actually care that it's anti-Semitic. 12 o'clock, finally remember he is a human being who needs food. 1 p.m., scream about how he has definitely totally been inside a woman. And then finally at 2 p.m., because his day can't go past that, I refuse to believe he exists past that point. It would just be Paul Joseph Watson remembers that half of his audience is incels, and him being inside a woman is not actually a positive thing for him.
Yeah, it's not good for the brand.
No, it's not.
I don't know.
If he's a Chad, he's the enemy. But if he's not a Chad, he has to look at himself and question his life choices.
Well, he is the handsomest man, of course, and he has been.
Oh, of course.
Bragging that you fuck and saying the words "I've been inside X" is gross to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean,
doesn't work very well in his favor either.
Can we talk about his DSLs? You know what? I actually, this is not a joke, and I don't know why I thought this, but for like 3 years, I thought Paul was gay. I don't know where that comes from. I was just like, he's just a gay guy and he's mad.
I mean, if you look at him, it does kind of scream big Milo Indianapolis energy.
Maybe that's it. They're very similar, I suppose. Maybe that was it.
And both well deserving of their platforms. Also, I have just been informed there are 2 potential names for groupings of SJWs. Either a blizzard of SJWs, a grouping of snowflakes.
Sure, yeah.
Or a re of SJWs.
Oh wow! I did see a trigger.
A trigger of SJWs.
Yeah.
So the only reason I wouldn't want to use that one is that just sounds kind of ableist. So
I mean, I think re does too, but I mean, like, I don't know.
It kind of does. It depends though. It's kind of an older meme.
A purity of SJWs.
See, I don't actually know that many SJWs who engage in purity testing, though.
Me either. They're almost always liberals, but yeah.
Yeah, I know a few of them where they're like, wait, you're telling me that you didn't engage in the action that led to the most amount of liberty possible?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's a terrible segue into the actual topic, isn't it?
Well, I guess we should be on topic. That is one of the things, which was interesting because I don't think that his arguments lead towards liberty at all. I did not watch, full disclosure, I did not watch your debate. I noticed that after we watched his video that you had done that, and I was like, well, I gotta hear this. I have to hear this. But it was like an hour and a half long, and so we weren't gonna do it on stream at that point. But, the video we watched was about, how... Which one was it specifically? Now I'm forgetting which one specifically. It was one of his most recent ones.
So he did one video, which was him saying that the civil rights ruling.
Yeah, that was the
Supreme
one.
Court
That was the one.
Was immoral. I did a response to that, pointing out that actually it's not immoral.
Right.
Like the world you construct consequentially from doing something like that is materially better. And if you have better material end gains, I think that's more important than whether or not the actual action is pure. There's a video I'm going to be doing on my channel actually about how libertarianism is basically latent Christianity. It cares not for the consequences of any one action. It cares about how pure the action is.
Yeah.
Which is one of the apologetics you get for the Christian God being able to murder whoever he wants in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those weren't sins because those were done, by God. They were done without sin, so those are good actions. Whereas with a libertarian, it's whatever action seems to maximize the amount of liberty for the individual doing those actions, whether or not they actually hinder liberty for everyone else. That doesn't seem to matter.
Right.
They just redefine liberty.
It would seem like liberty. The best way wouldn't be just for the individual. It would seem like the maximal amount of everyone's liberty is the highest amount of liberty that you could have. And I don't know how you necessarily justify it in a metric with numbers, but he did this weird thing where he considered unemployment like a 0 on the scale, and he did like a +1, 0, -1. Wouldn't unemployment under capitalism be a -1? Am I bonkers here?
So the way that he boils that down, and I pointed out that when we had our debate, I pointed out the problem is when you boil these things down to simple mathematics,
Right.
you ignore all nuance,
Mhm.
which creates this weird thing where like you just care about purity instead of whether or not something actually fucking matters. So what he does is he says that if you hire somebody, like everybody starts at a net zero. If you hire somebody, that's a +1 in their life, and if you fire them, that's a -1 in their life. So they're back at net zero, and nothing bad has happened. Now, you and I probably both know that this ignores a lot of things.
Yeah.
One, 3 years into your time into a career, you will probably be in a different material position than before. You may have moved to a new apartment that costs more. You may
Mhm.
have bought a car that's not a clunker that costs more, and now without a job, you have to go to a lower paying job if you even can. So you're not just going back to where you were, and many times you're going further back than you were before. Also, depending on the circumstances of getting fired, it's not just I had a clean record and then I got hired and then I got fired and now I have a clean record going into my next job. No, once you get fired, whenever that business gets called about you in the future, they're going to be able to give whatever BS answer they want in
Yep.
order to argue that you should or shouldn't be hired at a place. I actually knew somebody when I just turned 18 and knew someone who their first job had done that to them. They basically blacklisted them for the entire city. After they fired them, they couldn't get hired anywhere else, at least for the year that I was in that city. It doesn't just put you to a -1, but Michael seems to argue that it is one an extension of the business's rights of association because he treats businesses like individuals,
Mhm.
for them to be able to do that, and two, uh, once they fire you, it doesn't matter whatever like hill you roll down and whatever cesspool you fall into. And I'm like, it's not that they're responsible for the things that happen to you after they fire you. It's that whether or not they fire you should be considered under legitimate means. That's the argument.
Right.
Um,
And also that I don't think it's a zero, like you're just living a neutral existence in capitalism when you don't have a job. Like I feel like having a basic job is the zero, not the negative. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think it's a plus
but
one because you need
so
it to survive. You can't like people don't exist at a neutral zero and remain unemployed most of their lives.
so I think merely by even having that opinion, you exemplify the problem with his argument,
Yeah.
and that is that his notation of what is a +1, -1, or zero is completely arbitrary.
Right.
He basically constructs a super subjective framework and then argues that everyone around him has to abide by that framework. And if they don't abide by that framework, they used their personal liberty to do so. So they're actually using his framework, making his framework objective morality. I'm not saying that sounds exactly like the fucking Eggman, the way that he justifies UPG, but that's exactly how Stephen Molyneux justified UPG. Um, Not comparing Michael to Nazi, but he also did start the Turning Point USA chapter in his college. So
Mm,
hard
yeah.
hard sell there.
Yeah. Thank you, St. Henry. Um, yeah, it didn't seem like he had a grasp, or maybe he does, but it's like a totally different definition of liberty, and I could not figure out what he thinks liberty is when I was watching his video because it seemed like a lot of things ran counter to it when it was something he found uncouth necessarily, right? Like I don't know what he thinks what liberty, like what's that like?
So for him, the way he defines liberty, and I hope I'm not strawmanning him here because even though I am not a fan of him, I'd rather accurately represent
Sure,
him
yeah.
to throw tomatoes. Um, but the way that he defined liberty was that it was the culmination of all of your negative rights. And he argues that positive rights do not and cannot exist because a positive right, this is going to sound very much like Rand Paul, a positive right cannot exist in his framework because a positive right requires the subjugation of another human being. So, for instance, like he would consider a property right a negative right, even though property rights technically have to manifest as positive rights
Yeah.
because right now the way that you protect your property rights is through tax paid law enforcement, which would mean that you're having to subjugate someone else to enforce your rights. But he would argue that somehow property rights are like granted in some way that makes them a negative right.
Yeah, I guess that would have to be. It's because it seems like it's got to be it's a very specific set of circumstances for his argument to make sense.
His arguments work in the hypothetical, but as soon as you pull them into practice,
I guess
they stop working. I'll quote something that he said during our debate. Now, bear in mind, during the debate, he kept pulling away from the subject of the debate was right to fire, and kept talking about a business's right to not hire, which is not the same thing.
Sure.
I had to pull him back repeatedly.
Yeah.
But ignoring that, his argument is that it is not immoral if he had the option to employ 60% of the United States, and it wouldn't materially hurt him to do so. He could employ 60% of the United States, and they would all be able to live normally, but without his employment, they would all starve to death. There's nothing immoral about his inaction there, because it's his inaction that led to the starvation of 60% of the population.
Right. It seems like he doesn't know how to apply ethics. It seems like he only deals in morality. Like, it's really strange. Like, he basically failed Philosophy 101's, like the trolley problem.
Well, see, it's not... That is not a failure of the trolley problem.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, like,
he a bad answer.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. He almost doesn't even want to engage in it. Is kind of the idea.
Well, yeah. So, like, a rule utilitarian will look at the trolley problem and say, do I know who the one person is on the right side and the 5 people are on the other? If I don't, then I pull the lever to kill the 1 to save the 5, because that maximizes the amount of people that survive, which is the good that I'm going for via rule utilitarianism. The libertarian says that if I am to pull the lever, I am exercising my liberty to infringe on someone else's right to life, and therefore I am now being immoral. So regardless of how many people die, the immoral thing is pulling the lever.
Right, but it's not the ethical thing.
It's not the ethical thing. It only works within that personal moral framework. Yeah. It's like when you're talking to a 13 or 14-year-old person who's just discovering what it's like to interact with students around them in a social way, as opposed to just throwing dirt at each other on the playground. And you're trying to talk to them about how to interact with the people around you. And they go, well, it doesn't matter if they get hurt. It only matters that I didn't do something wrong.
That's so stupid. I don't think that's because the argument for libertarianism is not only that you think it's right, but that it would lead to the most ideal state of living, right? Like, isn't that the reason you argue for it? Is the ideal state of existence?
The ideal state of existence is one that maximizes your personal liberty. That's what libertarian argues. The problem with that, though, that I find, and you may agree with me or not, when they have a really ill-defined version of liberty, it ignores certain important material conditions. So, for instance, if I live in poverty and I can only afford Top Ramen and I can only afford my mortgage, I can't even afford a phone, which can also mean that I might not even be able to get certain jobs, because getting a call back is kind of important. But I can only afford like the bare minimum to just coast by and survive. Yeah. In what ways can I actually exercise my liberty? Because under the libertarian framework, like, I'm doing fine. I'm not infringing on anybody. Nobody's infringing on me. Everything's perfectly honky-dory. But in reality, I'm in an economic class that prevents me from moving in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. I functionally, I have no liberty. I have it in theory, but this is the classic that works in practice, but it will never work in theory.
Yeah.
Which seems to be what libertarianism is. Everything works in theory, but in practice,
I agree. And
nothing.
I think extending this to how we should apply this is the kind of arguments that we should be having when we run for political office as lefty people or leftists, is like, say, hey, this maximizes liberty. And I think if you taught in opinions of electoralism aside, since this is a system that we operate in right now in the United States, I think it behooves us to explain that your life is just more libertous in these ways, and that, like, hey, it's not slavery, and this is something he said in the video, it's slavery to make a doctor care for you, which is fucking wild.
Oh, there's a fun argument where that's concerned. By that logic, a fireman or a policeman's duty is like, ignore the current issues with police, because there's shit tons.
Yeah, there's a bit of a kerfuffle right now about police. Maybe you guys haven't heard of it,
but the idea, like, let's just say that the idea of law enforcement, not necessarily police as we currently understand them.
Sure.
Police as we currently understand them can do a whole lot of shit to fuck up your personal liberties.
cabbies and chat.
But if you take that logic, then every single law enforcement officer, every single fireman already are slaves. Because in the United States, I actually have an article, I can find it real quick, but there was a time where fire safety via the way we understand the job of a fireman was done in the same way that medicine is done right now, where a lot of it was by insurance. There were instances where a fireman would come to a burning house, see if you were a paying customer, and if you weren't, leave. And under Michael's framework, that's a better world. I don't fucking agree.
Except, of course, like, that ignores, like, the house next door that maybe is a paying customer that would like preventative care in addition to reactive. Like, I don't know. That doesn't it doesn't seem to be, again, with a libertarian mindset, it doesn't seem to be an ideal state of being if I don't know, is it more liberty to have your house burned down and have to pay for it out of pocket each time that there's this problem? Like, I know it doesn't feel like more liberty.
Because under Michael's framework, being constrained monetarily is not an injunction on your personal liberty. This is also why he doesn't have a problem with capitalism. The idea of constraining someone monetarily is not a problem. Also, I actually found the quote specifically or not the quote, but the portion from this article. The original fire safety system was soon exposed as terribly flawed, as rival brigades often ignored burning buildings once they discovered that it had no insurance policy with their company. Eventually, a solution was agreed upon in which all the insurance companies would supply money and equipment to a municipal authority charged with stationing fire prevention assets and firefighters equally around the city to respond to all fires. This did not solve the problem entirely, as the brigade still tended to favor saving insured buildings to those without any insurance at all.
Yeah.
But
there's a good scene in Gangs of New York that does this. That shows literally this happening.
But it's like, this is the reason why during the debate, to be fair, I don't have the same rhetorical skills as Michael, and I would probably agree that I did not actually come as prepared as I should have to the debate. So as far as the debate structure, I'm perfectly fine accepting that I lost the debate. Now, do I still think I'm right? Yes. I don't think Michael was terribly convincing. But as far as, like, the flow of a debate, I'm perfectly fine going, yeah, I lost that because I didn't perform as well, but debate is 60 to 70% theater.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Also, where is it? I had the source for that quote, and it's pulling up with a lovely "this site can't be reached." Come on, Opera, please work with me.
Oh,
I like sourcing the shit I say. It's kind of important to me.
Facts. How dare you? Jake, can you be my dad IRL? No, but I can say dad-like stuff like, "Hey, I'm really proud of you, champ."
Oh wow, I wish my dad had ever said that to me.
Yeah, same.
That doesn't sound very dad-like to me. To me, no. That sounds like what cartoons told me my dad should be.
You're right. That's pretty much what I did. I was pretending because my dad was like, "Why are you playing a girl in a video game?" And I was like, I just picked I don't know. It's Nintendo. It's not really like that sophisticated of a gaming machine. Wait until 2020, dude. Which you won't be able to. You're dead now. You haven't called me a slur, so you don't sound at all like my dad. Wow. Wow.
You haven't talked to me 3 days after I called you on Father's Day, apologizing to me for not getting to the phone. So I don't think you're my dad. I wish I was joking.
Oh, well,
that was Father's Day this year.
My dad was like, "Go ahead, commit suicide. It'll just be another burden. Do you want to do that to your mom?" Wow. Wow.
Oh, don't be a dad like that. Just say things that most dads would say, like, "I'm really disappointed in you."
I'm really disappointed. I'm gonna go get a pack of smokes, and I won't stream for 8 years.
Look, it's not that the milk was more important than you 8 years ago. It's that a lot of stuff happened after I got the milk. Actually, I'm not even sure if I got the milk in the first place. It might have just been condoms.
Jesus.
By the way, this is why me and your mom divorced.
Oh, that's sad.
Is this?
That's sad.
Is this true dadding?
Too real. Too real. Thanks for following, Omega. Libertarians in general, I don't think, have a very good grasp on how to apply any situation that is outside of the extremely privileged viewpoint of themselves. I don't like this guy. I don't think has experienced abject poverty. You know what I mean?
And even if he did, like, I could even grant that maybe he did, because I don't know his personal life story aside from the fact that he can apparently afford college. Which would have been nice, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But I will be perfectly honest. Even if I assume that he has experienced abject poverty, it is. I have to assume one of two things: either you haven't, which would be your position, probably hasn't, and therefore just doesn't know, or I could even grant that maybe he has, and just thinks that everyone should suffer as he did, which again sounds like my dad.
Yeah. The old. We can't forgive student loan debt because I had to pay mine off. Pretty much the same exact
We
thing.
shouldn't emancipate the slaves because that spits on every slave that died in slavery.
Ooh.
It wouldn't be fair to their memory to emancipate the slaves coming up afterwards, right? That's the argument against getting rid of student debt. That's all that argument is.
Yeah, it's pretty dog shit. I don't know. There's a thing. For a little bit this year, I had some extra time, so I was like, you know what? I'll pick up a little extra gig, and I tried my hand at some postal work for a little bit, and that ended up taking too much time, so I just quit. But it was very interesting to go back to the workforce for a little bit, because I'm a glutton for punishment. But there's a lot of conservative people in the small town that I worked in, and I heard the following exact, like, this was like a sentence. The initial thought was, I can't believe that people would vote for someone like Bernie Sanders because all they want is free, 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 and things cost money, and they're just so entitled. And then basically right after that was, I cannot believe how much insurance costs. If it costs any more than it does right now, my husband would be dead because we couldn't afford it.
So there's a couple of things that are really interesting when you encounter somebody like that. First of all, they assume that we wouldn't be paying for the insurance.
I know. I don't know how their brains work.
I literally just I was very lazy this year. I admit it. This was the first year that I had done YouTube full time for the entire year. Is just like, this is my one job. This is what I'm doing. So I just had to go through the headache of filing taxes as a self-employed person.
I'm so sorry.
It's so I put that off for forever. Finally did it. And after getting it done, I'm like, well, wow, that's a weight off my shoulders. But then it popped into the back of my head. Wait a minute, hold on. Don't people bitch at me and say that we can't afford healthcare for everybody? Didn't I just file taxes? What was I doing with those things anyway?
Well,
What was
nothing
those
good right now. Not under this
those-
administration.
were those taxes just going to kicking trans people out of the military and beating people with batons? Yeah, probably. Actually, this is America. To be fair,
You can survive COVID, but good luck surviving the medical debt. Can we survive COVID? We don't even, like. I don't know. There's not people not wearing fucking masks because they think
we got
it's
60,000 cases per day.
I live in one of the
Like-
better states. Michigan is doing well because Whitmer is listening to medical professionals. Surprise.
I live in Georgia, and
Oof.
Kemp is not.
Yeah. Well.
Nah, it's So strangely enough, there are places that I am incredibly happy are like literally showing how you should be running a business while in the pandemic. Because I can understand the argument that like everything going into lockdown screws with everybody. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I get that. Like literally, your working class gets screwed by this. Cool, I can accept that. It's about structuring things in a way where we can still maintain safety. As for giggles, we decided to see what it was like at Six Flags, like what things they are doing to try to keep things protected. Because like the idea of a business trying to run like rides and shit like that with the pandemic seemed kind of hard for me to picture. How were they going to do this? It also doesn't help that like Six Flags memberships here are super cheap and they come with food. So like if you don't want to cook, you can just go to Six Flags and get food.
Wow.
But that is if you're willing to deal with the stuff they have set in. The way they have it set up at Six Flags right now, dealing with COVID, is there's temperature gauges everywhere.
Okay.
Reading your temperature, and they're automatic. And the mask policy is enforced everywhere, as is social distancing everywhere. If you're waiting for a ride, you stay 6 feet apart from everybody. The rides every 30 minutes shut down and get cleaned and sanitized for 10 minutes. And while that's super inconvenient for the park goers, it also means they don't die, which is,
I'm actually surprised
Really?
that Six Flags is taking so many precautions.
I was surprised too. I was actually like, we only went there for about 3 hours, enough to get food and enough to try out a ride and then just head home. But we were actually really surprised that they had so many precautions set up. Like you couldn't get into the park without a reservation, so they could make sure that they only had a certain number of people in the park.
Makes sense.
The food places were all set up differently. Like we've had our memberships for about a year and a half now, maybe. So well before the COVID stuff, we'd already eaten at most of the restaurants they had there. And I saw somebody in your chat say that park food is bad. Actually, Six Flags here has like 12 or 15 different restaurants that serve different types of food, which is really nice. It's not just like your stand deep fried park food all the time.
Yeah.
But the way they have the food set up is even different, because the way that they had it before, they'd serve it to you on a tray, and then you'd go take your tray to the trash can and set it down and dump your trash and leave. The way they have it set up right now is that they put all of everybody's stuff in individual boxes, and they cook it before you order. So they set up a bunch of boxes ready to just hand off to you, so they can get you out of the line as quick as possible. Which is, again, that one is actually more convenient for people, because your food might not be as fresh, but you're not stuck sitting in line. So again, like I see businesses like that, and then in my local area, we've got Walmart, as effective as it may or may not be, has like the guidance stickers, like shop this way, shop this way. Like that's less effective than the temperature gauges and everything else. But I want to see more businesses take literally just Six Flags model and go, yeah, put temperature stations at the front of the store so you can check if people have an issue before they even walk in, enforce a mask policy when they're in, change the way you produce your stuff in the food to make sure people get in and get out fast, and just enforce social distancing. That's safer.
I agree. I go to up here we have, it's sort of like a Walmart but nice, Meijer up here, and they have a system where like you walk into the vestibule. Thank you, McClippy, I appreciate it. You walk into the vestibule area, and it's cordoned off so you can't like intermingle. All of the carts and everything are sanitized and set out. They do have the arrows on the ground. They have masks at the front.
Our local Target's doing that as well.
So you can buy them. And all the employees really feel strongly and enforce the mask policy. They have a union, though, that takes care of them, and they probably are informed rather than people at Walmart. But yeah, it's a I don't know. I've been seeing, luckily, more people wear masks than not in my area, so that's been nice because I sure would like to go do stuff someday. That would be fun. You guys remember doing stuff?
Doing stuff was neat. I'm sitting here as somebody who grew up literally in a card shop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering with people all the time from like age 10 to now. And I'm just sitting here going, man, I liked competing in tournaments.
Yeah.
I liked playing cards with people. That was neat. I enjoyed that. Also, somebody in my chat, Star Raptor Flog, mentioned, what about essential businesses? How are you going to get into a store to buy food if you can't get in because of COVID? Luckily, in my area, now granted, I live in the metro Atlanta area, so we have a lot of options here. It's kind of the nature of being here. We've got gigabit internet and all kinds of stuff that just helps you function.
Yeah.
Even out living in the woods like I do, because there are a few pockets of that, we can actually do Instacart here. And if you order above like $35, so like if you're ordering all the food for your week, they waive your delivery fee, which is, neat. Not everybody can afford the surcharge that Instacart puts on everything, but if you are sick, you can have a healthy person go get all of your food, bring it to you, and you can even tell them on the app, hey, please place the food like in front of the door, and don't interact with me. Like don't
don't even, which is great. I've been doing a lot of DoorDash, Grubhub type stuff, which I use the pass, so you don't have to spend. It's I'm fortunate enough to be able to spend the $10 a month to not spend the surcharge on stuff, because there's places around. But you can also get grocery delivery from a lot of places if you check the app, and a lot of times there is no fee, or there's a $2 fee. And it's basically kind of the same amount of money you might go if you go there. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you make impulse buys if you actually walk through the store. So you actually save money if you just get the essentials and stuff. I really like doing that. It's I don't know. There's some conveniences that have sprung up out of this that I think will carry over to make the consumer experience better in the long run. But I mean, just like, there's several people in my chat. Crispy Broccoli was one of them. Like, remember going to a store without genuine, palpable fear? That was nice. I never really trusted people near me, and not in like a paranoid, like I need to hold a gun on me at all times. But like, I just feel like most people are stupid, and I don't know if that's arrogant to say. I think like a lot of people are very, very stupid, especially in rural America where property taxes aren't that high. Our schools are pretty bad, and they live in the woods and listen to Fox News.
You just literally described my parents' place.
Yeah, in my hometown. And very rural. I literally grew up next to a farm. Yeah, it's just so I've never really had a lot of confidence in other people's intellectual capabilities, and it's really shining, really, really shining during this time. So many people like it's my freedom. It's like, no, it's mine. If you cough on me, it's my shit, not yours. Like, I'm doing this for you.
There's a argument someone close to me had with a family member recently, and they threw it to me, and it was an argument against using masks in public. And they said, you should be responsible for your own health, because that's your responsibility. It's not mine. And I said, okay. But considering that we know there's a deadly virus out right now, that argument sounds to me like you fired a gun into the crowd and you said, it's not my responsibility that the bullet landed somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not my fault somebody got hit. They shouldn't have been in a crowded area where there was a chance that their health could have been impacted.
Almost like a revolver, and it maybe will have something in the chamber, and you're going da-da-da-da-da-da, and just spraying it. Maybe the gun goes off because maybe you have COVID. Maybe you caught it along the way and not wearing a mask, and just like,
there's a 2-week incubation period.
Yeah.
Most people don't have an attention span, even a quarter of that.
Right. I saw a guy, actually, it was amazing. I went to self-checkout. I only had like a few items. went to self-checkout. I was talking to the lady, the person that oversees it. It was this nicer, older lady, and I don't know, she had to come over to me for something. And we're having a short conversation. It's very nice. And service people have a bad day, and I try to engage at least. And there was a guy next to me at the other stall, and he was this older guy. When he was at the thing, he was wearing a mask, and then he took the mask off and under his chin, and then he openly coughed like 4 or 5 times while going through and putting his groceries in the self-checkout. And she's like, well, great, now I have to fucking sanitize that whole thing. And what is the point? I don't know. They're so stupid. Why is everyone so stupid?
I don't understand that.
It's like wearing a life jacket and then taking it off when you get on the jet ski. You know what I mean? Like, why?
Like I want to be more aerodynamic, so I took it off so that I would be more aerodynamic on the jet ski.
Yes.
Now
take it off on the way to the car or something. I don't know.
This also means I can now hit the water and sink lower much easier. But just ignore the fact that I can now sink like a rock in the middle of the ocean. That's not important. What's important is my freedoms.
Yeah, and now it's like the progression of this, and I wonder if it's a combination of just more cases and it hitting different systems and mutation. But now, like, there was a confirmed in South Carolina, a child died, confirmed. There's lots of young people that looked like that one young girl. She was in like her 20s. She had to get like a double lobe transplant for her lungs. Like this shit is not like the boomer remover as it was advertised as. I mean, it is, but it also like it's a frag grenade. There are and young people are on the outside of the radius here. You can still die from that shit. It's not good. It can affect you for the rest of your life. Like, I don't know, man. Respiratory disease does not sound fun.
You cannot simultaneously be because as somebody who is on the larger side, me specifically.
Me too.
I have heard many people argue that I should go out and run more. I should have done that more as a kid. That having those habits would have been better for me. It's really weird to hear those same styles of people argue that it's fine if the children get a respiratory illness, which
stronger
could effectively mean that they can't actually do that running on track we told them to do, so that now we can just make fun of them for being fat later. I guess this is all just a recipe for allowing cruelty. Weird.
Yeah, I'm shocked that the ideas led by Republicans and conservatives in general will lead to more cruelty down the line. Wow. Fucking surprise.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Here we are. Also, I got a super chat from Real Lock on my end. It was 40 minutes ago, and I've been doing this long enough to know that I am really bad at looking at my super chats.
I missed.
It was from $5. Old school, the Bible Reloaded is one of the things that made me an atheist and not a deist. So cool.
I'm glad that you enjoyed it. We have, thankfully, the age has allowed us to be less edgy but still informative. So that's good.
That tends to happen to everybody who's not Richard Spencer.
Isn't that weird? I don't know. The idea of being edgy, because when you're young, you haven't heard that shit before, and you don't understand the implications of a lot of the stuff. And I don't think we ever said anything like hardcore hateful, but definitely enough to where I wouldn't say it today. A lot of stuff. And Hannah and I had to talk about this before, and I don't know. Like, this goes still into the conversation that we're having. Just the idea of harm reduction is really appealing. And it seems like as we grow, we should probably try to be not as exclusive, but as inclusive as possible as we move forward. Just because, like, the happier everybody else is, and the more positive the experience, the better for everyone involved. And not even just like even if it's just like a really cynical, I make more money doing this. Like if you're broadly, not super offensive to everybody involved, like more people can enjoy your shit. I don't know. I'm glad that a lot of people also, we have since you haven't been doing this for nearly as long.
No.
But
about 2.5 years.
Yeah, but I'm sure you were aware of the YouTubers, and I'm glad that we in our community were able to avoid the anti-SJW part of the arc. It seems that internet atheism went through. I don't know why that happened, but well, I know why-ish, but it's like it's still sad, I guess.
Money is a wonderful factor in a lot of that. Granted, so during a lot of that, I was still 2016. I technically still kind of considered myself Christian-ish. I was in this like weird phase where I heard Bible Reloaded, Cult of Dusty, and Amazing Atheist as like whispers on the wind every now and again, and that's about it. I discovered atheist YouTube after I actually became an atheist.
Yeah.
And then actually when the first Faithless Forum happened, I got to meet a lot of the YouTubers who I actually enjoyed, so that was cool.
I remember going to those events and liking the people there. Man, that was fun.
Well, I can't say that I hated anybody from those events afterwards.
I don't go to the Faithless Forum, but yeah.
Well, I know that like MythCon went down.
I got disinvited from MythCon for not being a chud. That's true.
I mean, to be fair, it does seem that for the most part, they are chud central now.
They are just terrible.
They've thrown logic to the wind and accepted intuition, which is really weird.
But it's not even good intuition. That's the thing. Like you can intuit correctly, they just don't. But I agree.
It's weird because you've got people who go, we don't need critical thinking skills. We have common sense.
No, you don't.
No, we don't. My grandma tried telling me that a few months ago, and I'm just like, you realize, granted, bear in mind, she grew up in the American South, and that does not lead you to having the best of educations usually. I did too, so I would know. I'm an idiot. But in our conversation, when she said, everybody's got common sense, people just don't have common sense anymore, and I was like, Grandma, you do realize that common sense is just whatever biases you happen to step into for like the first 18 years of your life. Like the idea for me, I grew up as like the one white kid in the ghetto. So the idea that some people have is like, I know it's racist. There's a lot of people who have this idea though, that you should step on the other side of the road if there's like a group of black people on one end walking towards you. And I'm just like, yeah, but that never became common sense to me because that's all there was around me. I only knew black people.
Sure.
That's all I had in Montclair.
Yeah.
So there was no option on the other side of the road. That didn't exist. So that's not part of my common sense. There are other racist things that I did believe that have thankfully been mostly beaten out. But like that idea, some people call that common sense. I don't. I can't.
Yeah. Ronnie with a dono says, flashback to that time I stopped watching the Bible Reloaded because you were too big of, quote, lib cuck SJWs. Even though I thought y'all heard it. God, I was pathetic. I actually heard a lot of that shit. A lot of people who there was probably in that 2016, 2017 area where we were like, yeah, this is stupid and Donald Trump is bad and here's why, and then like all the stuff. Like there's a bunch of people like, you're just SJW cucks, and it's like, I mean, not like really. Like it's just like common sense. Like I'm not out here like advocating for anything that you think is particularly wild. It's just like pretty straightforward. And it's just like, so we lost a lot of those people, and then a lot of those people ended up coming back and apologizing and being like, yeah, that was a mistake. That's bad.
I've only had that happen. Granted, I've not been on the platform as long, so like there haven't been as many cultural shifts for the time I've been here. But I think, if memory serves, I think that only happened once for me, and there was one guy that I had to kick out of my live stream chats after several weeks of him just being an absolute chud fuck. And then who this person was left my memory. It just is not a person I remembered anymore. Like if you brought his name up to me, I could call everything, but like this person didn't live rent free in my mind. And then I go onto Amino of all places, and there's a very small bread tube Amino that I went in just to see what was going on in there, hopped into one of the chats, and the guy was like, "Holy shit, are you actually the real Suris?" I was like, I mean, yeah, why? And then he was like, "Hey, I'm such and such. You banned me from your chat like months ago, and I've since started a YouTube channel and realized I was a fucking asshole." And I'm just like, "Wait, you started a small breadtube channel after I kicked you out for chutting?"
People are
Okay.
People are, again, this is why I think people are kind of dumb. A lot of people are very intellectually fickle like that, where they just sort of, and I think it has to do with age. Usually they're younger people. Where you're trying to, being young can suck. You're trying to figure out who the fuck you are. You got all sorts of these sudden responsibilities happening. Like, the world is a lot bigger and scarier than it was in high school. And you still have that sort of clique mentality. And I gotta say, the right, especially in 2016, was very, in that sort of the bordering years, they were pretty seductive with that, like, hey, whoever you are, come on over here. We can say whatever we want and do whatever we want. And
welcome to BitChute, everybody, where your careers can die.
Yeah, it was just sort of that, the very Milo Yiannopoulos, like, I have sex with black guys. I can't be racist, but I can still say the N-word, like, buddy. And so, yeah, and there was that sort of, like, coming out of the mentality of, like, the 2000s of, like, things being sort of blasé and cool and stuff like that. And now, like, kind of being cool is, like, being inclusive and being nice to people and, like, wholesomeness and, like being well-read and enjoying intellectual pursuits and stuff. And so the zeitgeist shifted really fast with social media. And I don't think we were ready for this fucking, like, I don't know, this rupture in the social fabric. It was very strange. Like, we have gone through a very weird 8 years, guys. It's been... like, history books should and will be written about the last 4 years of the Obama administration and the first 4 years of the Trump administration, and then all the shit that happened in the world during those times. Like, it's been a lot of stuff.
It's very weird to consider the fact that when somebody asks, like, hey, what did you do during the race riots of 2020 during the pandemic, is a thing somebody's legitimately going to ask you in 20 years. And you're just like, I had my therapist ask me, because I said that I was going to be doing a video on the George Floyd stuff, which ended up being many videos because people like the Hodge twins and Candace Owens just couldn't shut their fucking faces. So I ended up doing several videos on it, and my therapist was like, this seems to be taking a toll on you. Why are you doing this? It's not like you have to. And I'm like, well, it's not that I have to. It's that in 10 years, when I finally have a kid and they're going into history class, and they're seeing this stuff for the first time, probably not in 10, probably in 20 at that point.
Sure.
And they're just like, hey, Dad, what did you do when this all happened? I didn't want to be the person that just said, well, I was in a position where I could have done a lot as a YouTuber and influencer, and I just didn't.
Yeah.
That's not the thing I want to say.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I kind of look at it like a, what's that word? Kind of, not legacy, but just leaving it behind for other people, where it's like we could have been right earlier, I guess. I don't know. Like if I can make an argument and it persuades you in some way to be nicer to somebody, or to be kinder, or to be accepting of someone, even if you don't necessarily understand it, like they're an atypical gender, or they have a sexuality you can't really wrap your head around, or whatever's going on there, like, that's a good thing, and it's one less person that is going to be shitty to that person or people like them in the future, and hopefully that person will advocate for that as well. Like, we have to, specifically what the thing is right now with the BLM and being white and not part of the community, is less of advocating or centering yourself in the conversation and, like, stop being racist, guys, and more of a stop being complicit in racism. Stop, like, when that uncle is there and he's saying something on Facebook, don't let that go unchallenged. Like, actually challenge it, even if it's gonna, like, as long as you have the mental capacity and emotional space for it. But, like, I do. So you hit back, and we don't just let this shit slide anymore, because we used to.
I think I'm not sure how familiar you are with Innuendo Studios.
Yeah.
There was something he said in one of his videos. I can't remember which one it is specifically. But he said the difference between somebody on the left and somebody on the right usually is that somebody on either side can agree with, like, the ills of the world, injustice, low wages, bigotry, stuff like that. You can get them to agree that those are bad things sometimes. The problem that you really run into is somebody on the right usually says, well, that's just how the world works. And then somebody on the left will go, well, why does it have to be?
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. I think we forget that and I try to explain this to people, and sometimes it breaks through, sometimes it doesn't. Like, the way that society is, and the sort of foundations of it, and the ideas that you're going to run with, we made that up. We can unmake that up. It's literally imaginary. It feels really real because we're, like, role-playing in it, but, like, we could not do whatever we don't want to do collectively and just go, you know what? Let's do this other thing. And do that. We could literally delete money and just give everybody whatever they wanted whenever they wanted it. I
mean, when you consider the fact, let's say you're having on the topic of the things we've socially constructed in LARP.
Yeah.
If you're having a debate with somebody and they try to say that, gender can't be a social construct, look, it's real, just respond with, money can't be a social construct, look, it's real.
Right.
It's the same. We agreed on what money is worth, at least. At least somebody somewhere agreed on it, and everybody else had to accept it at some point. Yay, yeah. Capitalism. Supply side economics, the best kind of. Not really. It's not good. But those things are all things that we socially agreed on. We agreed that we should use money instead of a bartering system. Economically, of course, we can still trade Pokemon cards. That's fine. But those things, I think you hit the nail on the head when we've LARPed those things for so long that's just how things are. It's how things always need to be, according to some people, but it doesn't have to be. Like, I'm okay with the mere concept of money. I just don't think it should be abused in the way that it is right now. I don't at all. The current system that we are using literally takes all the power away from the proletariat at the bottom and puts it in the power of everybody at the top. If somebody says, I'm going to buy all these milk cartons for 50 cents from the local farmer, and instead of reselling them for $2, effectively making my money back, paying my employees, and also paying me, they say, I'm going to sell the milk for $15. And then you manage to get everybody around you to agree that milk is now $15. Your working class has to accept that it's $15 now. They don't actually have a say in that.
Yeah, which of course would fall apart.
Sucks.
Or, well, they'd buy soy milk, which is better. But, and doesn't make me poo-poo. Regular milk makes me poo-poo. Lava, basically. It's basically lava. Frost Kane asks, who I assume is not a lefty, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you're a centrist. Fence right down the middle of your butthole. Why can't you have views on either side? This is a really good question, and I understand especially if you're an American, this is a thing you hear a lot. Why can't you have views on either side? Like, I don't think that anyone on the left or right wants views on the other side. But the discourse is important, and you have to talk through it and everything. But the idea here is that while I guess there's a few things. You overvalue opinions. Opinions are opinions. Opinions are not immutable or unapproachable or unimpeachable. They are, in fact, opinions. You can have the opinion that a black person is inherently inferior it's not just your opinion, man. You're a racist. A lot of people go, well, I'm just having an opinion. No. You're just wrong about a thing. So the right is, hilariously, the right is wrong. Conservatives are incorrect about a variety of things. Most of it is demonstrable, and most of it is very harmful. And so the argument is, why can't we have viewpoints from both sides, is one of them's just plain wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that later on you won't have still a right and left. It's just that the zeitgeist has moved, and kind of the obvious answer to a lot of these problems has moved to the left of the political spectrum. But within the left, I don't know if you're a part of the left, then you have the real important conversations. How should we, say, reorganize wealth? How should we organize housing? How should we organize our society? How should we have a government? How should we do borders? Should we have borders? Are cops good? In what way should law enforcement exist? Should it exist at all? Should we have no how libertarian, how authoritarian are we? So there is still arguments from both sides. It's just that the correct side is the left, and then within that you have stratification to the left, right, north, and south. Do you agree or disagree? I think that's pretty much...
So I think the only problem I have with that framework is that it requires as a foundation a particular spectrum for right and left, and I think that most of our spectrums, like the line spectrum, is obviously bunk. It's stupid.
Yeah.
That's what Ben Shapiro uses to go, look, the left is obviously all authoritarianism, and the right is obviously everything over there is obviously all freedom. You can't get more freedom and then suddenly end up in fascism. That's not how that works. You can't. So we obviously can't use that framework. You can't really use the political compass framework because that only gradients somebody. Two people that plot exactly the same on the political compass might disagree on several things that would have plotted them elsewise. And even doing like a 3-layered structure for that, where you take, here's social, here's class out this way, here's economic conversations this way, and try to plot people that way, even that doesn't work.
Like
so
in a 3D cube, that's kind of nice.
So I want, like, intuitively, I do agree that most facts tend to have a bit of a left-leaning bias. So when you talk about something like gender, most of what we understand as the left has a different view of gender than people on the right wing, and that view, I think, is more accurate. We have data and research to show that that's more accurate. When you have views on economics, you look at how conservatism was formed in France, and literally it was just a bunch of what was the middle class there going, how do we stop the proletariat from fucking us over when the nobles lose all their power? I know. We'll say that the nobles got their power via divine right of kings, and therefore they're the bad guys, but also the good guys. That's the birth of conservatism, everybody. So, like, on one hand, I do kind of agree that, by and large, most of the facts do lean with the left. I think the only problem, though, is whatever we consider right and left is based on a foundation of how we can even plot these things.
Yeah.
And none of them are like nightmarishly accurate. Like the compass isn't super accurate.
Yeah.
I forget who did. There's a video on this. It's from a smaller channel. He's got like 10K subs, but I can't remember his name. But it was called The Problem with the Political Compass, and he goes through like every different way we've tried to plot politics.
Yeah.
Starting with the line, then going to the compass, then going onward, and showed like the problems with each and every one, deconstructing them down. And that's kind of where I have the problem of, I want to agree, because by and large, what we consider left-leaning opinions seem to be the more accurate ones, but the foundation is kind of rickety.
Yeah, I don't even know how to make it more sturdy, I guess. Like a three-dimensional model where it's a cube and you can kind of rotate it and look around is kind of a nice visual in my head, but it might not be something that we can actually, it might just be a series of data points that might not be able to be plotted on a graph, but it's just values, kind of like what are those essential 6 ones, I don't remember what it's called, but those other the ones that don't put you on a graph, but rather they just tell you like you're more authoritarian, you're more libertarian, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I also just found the YouTube channel. It's Halim Al-Ra, which I don't know if I'm mispronouncing that. 25.5K subs. I actually just sent you on Discord, the video itself, if you want to watch it later.
Dope.
But it actually breaks down the problem with how we view the political compass really well, and I think it's really accurate. It's really informative.
That's very cool. That person asked again, having views or stances on a multitude of topics, regardless of the line of stand you draw. I mean, like, a lot of people have different stuff, but most of the things that we argue about between what we consider the modern left and modern right there's not middle ground. Like, there's not middle ground to human rights violations. There's not middle ground to, like, should the gays exist? You know what I mean? Later on, again, as you move left towards what I think most people that are informed consider the correct answers they tend to be what we would consider left-leaning. Then you get the nitty-gritty stuff, like how to organize that kind of shit. But, like, I think abortion is only interesting because people don't understand biology.
I think abortion is incredibly interesting for one reason. It allows me to fantasize about what could have been.
I suppose.
There are certain people, like Ben Shapiro, who I would generally argue the difference between them and an abortion is a missed opportunity.
Yes.
So I think that's where I find that interesting. The other thing is that just in general, arguments about abortion seem really weird when 9 times out of 10 they come from a super Christian framework.
Yeah.
And it's like, isn't your God the one that killed thousands of babies in a flood? That's your guy, right? That's your guy?
I do hear some people make a secular argument for life that I don't think is very compelling, but it always ends with, but I still think you should have the right to an abortion, so it effectively doesn't matter. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard a few secular ones. There was
Destiny
one girl
does one.
Destiny, I'm not familiar with Destiny's. I'm familiar with Hunter Avalon's. I've done a video against his, and we talked about our disagreements on that on my stream.
Yeah.
And there was one that was framed not unlike Hunter's during a debate with Matt Dillahunty. Nat took the side of pro-abortion, she took the side of anti-abortion, and they had their debate. But I don't find those arguments terribly convincing. So,
yeah.
Like and even then, at least with Hunter's, his ended with, you should have your right to an abortion. That's a thing you should do. With the debate with Matt Dillahunty, that one, if memory serves, it's been a few years since I've seen it. I think her stance was that legally abortion shouldn't be allowed at all. So there actually are some secular arguments that lean into the more authoritarian structure against women. They're rare, though.
I don't really understand. Someone like a Ben Shapiro, for instance, doesn't comprehend his authoritarianism? Or like a John Doyle?
I think I'm trying to think. It might be closer to a John Doyle, where, like, because John's whole shtick is a fancification of the 1950s.
Yeah.
That they were this perfect wonderland, and Leave It to Beaver was an accurate representation of
Black
morality.
people couldn't get home loans. You couldn't marry who you loved. Yeah, stuff like that.
And it was great. You could fire a black person for being an N-word. It was fine. That's what you could do back then. Apparently, actually, yeah. Civil Rights Act was 1964, so yes, actually, that was a thing you could do. BT Dubs, Michael Moreno, when we had our debate, he actually thinks that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in its entirety was immoral.
Yep. Which, again, we went over it when we watched this video. That is just asinine.
Yeah, I was very concerned when I got to that point. So I'm like, okay, so we're literally just dealing. This isn't coded in the flavors of John Doyle, but this is basically that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's that's yikesy.
Because he doesn't seem to understand that, like, and again, this is his personal liberty shit, but he doesn't understand that someone will exert their prejudice on someone to limit their freedom. Like, they just do. That's why those protections exist. Because we saw rampant use of that. It's
the whole, these things work in the world of the hypothetical,
mm-hmm.
and they're all cool and fine in the world of the hypothetical. But as soon as you bring them to reality, there are more people that suffer. And I don't think, granted, I know the mistake I made in my debate with Michael where this is concerned. I didn't actually press him on his definition of harm. That was my mistake.
How would you
because
define
if you can,
it?
yeah, how do I personally define harm?
Yeah.
Personally, I think harm is anything that negatively affects somebody can be seen as harmful. So like firing somebody is harmful. What
Yeah.
we don't argue whether or not something or whether or not firing somebody is or isn't harmful. We argue whether or not it was justified. The harm can be minor. Like I can get a paper cut and that's harm. That's minor. I could also get a sword wound, and that is of course more harmful. Though maybe actually less painful. I've had some pretty bad paper cuts, all things considered. Depending,
I think that changes
I
on day 2. I think day 2 the sword hurts worse.
From day 2, the sword might hurt worse unless
sore.
But see, the paper cut, I will forget I have it, and I will sanitize my hands in rubbing alcohol, and then suddenly it hurts more.
That would be it too,
yeah. But no, with I think a lot of that stuff ends up boiling down to my definition of harm is decently broad. Michael's definition of harm is very, very thin and narrow in that it only deals with the physical. But strangely enough, there's a thing that happened during the discussion portion of our debate where he said that PTSD does not count, but then admitted that he doesn't have a very thorough understanding of PTSD. And I pointed out to him during, I'm like, that's like saying chopping off somebody's legs doesn't harm them. Like PTSD is a physical manifestation. Like your amygdala actually grows in size. It stops being able to determine if fight or flight is actually necessary in a given scenario.
But even beyond that, he doesn't. The brain is physical.
Yes, the brain is physical. Your individual thoughts may exist only in the aether after they've been thought. But everything below that point,
they're
synapses and everything...
Chemicals and electro impulse, I mean, they're real, and as an organ, it exists. How can you not think that mental anguish is, in fact, in whatever way it manifests, you're just having a bad day and you're sad, like your favorite character died in a show, or, like, you have PTSD. Like, these are obviously very different things, but still, genuinely you feel them.
His position on that is informed... I say informed. That's a really... I'm using that term super fast and loose here. But it's informed by the idea of harm as presented in Stoicism. Because in Stoicism, mental harm is something that you accept onto yourself. Think
you choose to be offended.
Yes, that Christopher Hitchens actually said the exact same thing in during his run.
Yeah, Hitchens wouldn't have survived the meme wars.
No, not really. There's a lot of things that Hitchens did say that I like, one of which is libertarianism is the strange philosophy that Americans on the whole should be more selfish as a rule.
Yeah.
And that's weird.
He also said we should go bomb Afghanistan, but whatever.
He also said women aren't funny, so there's hits and misses with Hitchens.
Did he die before Bridesmaids came out? Come on. It's one of the all-timers.
But where Michael's thing is concerned, he tries to marry Stoicism and libertarianism to come to his positions. And I think that's kind of where the problem is, because Stoicism, as it was understood by the Greeks and Romans, was well before we had our understandings of how the brain works now.
Yeah.
We weren't able to do the types of studies into the brain that we are able to do right now. Like, I have a headache. Oh, just ignore it. And then, like, when you do the autopsy, you find out there was a brain hemorrhage. Like, that's a thing we can do now. We can do scans on the brain to see when there are portions that are lighting up more often than they should, portions that are enlarged or swollen more than they should. Like, somebody can be having a lot of pain leading them to have a bad mood. You can tell them to have all the self-control in the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that they might have a brain tumor, and there's no way back in that day to really know. So a lot of his ideas are based in a time where we didn't have a good understanding of mental health. So as a result, he doesn't have any understanding of mental health.
Yeah.
I think he needs to be educated on that. The other problem is that there are certain concepts in Stoicism that are directly opposed and in conflict with ideas in libertarianism. One of the ideas in Stoicism is the idea of justice, the idea that it is better for you to sacrifice from yourself in order to make the world a more just place, in order to make the world a better place. That's one of Epictetus's ideas for Stoicism from 1,500 years ago.
Yeah.
That idea is in direct conflict with the basis of libertarianism, which is hands off and I'm okay.
Yeah, true. What was that? This guy came back. You can see and agree with topics on both sides. See, I think I think much like Michael's inability to understand mental health, and again, I'm not trying to be an asshole or dismissive of people that find appeal on the right. I think the best part about the right and their politics is they're very good at branding. I think they're very good at making things sound very simple and cut and dry. Christians are good at this too. Like, evolution's so complicated. What if God just did it? You know what I mean? And that's appealing to a lot of people. Not to me, but a lot of people. And they do this thing that is often very appealing, where you could just say someone is causing this problem, and if you get rid of those people, in this case Mexicans, fascists do this a lot, and that's why a lot of people on the left, you see someone on the right say something and go, well, that's pretty fucking fashy. A lot of scapegoating, a lot of propaganda, make America great again. What does that even mean? Like, what is that thing? It just makes you feel good it makes your tinglies jingle. You know what I'm saying? So there's lots of stuff like that. So, but a lot of things that, like, a lot of people say, well, I'm socially, pretty left. I'm fine with gay people. I'm an ally of trans people. I don't want anyone to be poor, but I'm fiscally conservative, which means basically I care, but not enough to act.
But see, I used to find that particular position. That used to be my position. Like,
right, I used to think that like, because I think we were liberals, right?
The problem with that position, though, is that being socially on the left but fiscally on the right, many of your social ills on the left come from class conflict.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
Which means that if you agree fiscally with the right, then by the principle of entailment, the oppression that you're not for,
right,
on the left ends up happening anyway. It's like saying, I'm fiscally left, but socially conservative. Okay, so wait, where did you get this idea that it was okay to be better to other classes if you're socially conservative, where classism is okay?
I don't think most people are. I don't know that there is a person that's fiscally left and socially conservative.
I
don't think I've ever run into that. Yeah.
I don't know if one exists, but I think that the idea is as paradoxical as the socially left and fiscally conservative one, where when you actually start boiling things down, it's very hard to maintain that position. Like, I'm social. If somebody says, like, 1964, I agree with this left-wing principle. We need to not fire black people in the workplace. They should be able to have jobs, and that's fine. You go, okay, well,
but I don't like affirmative action.
It's like, but I don't think affirmative action is
I don't
needed.
Like the Civil
and then you
Rights
go,
Act. Yeah.
And then you go, well, hold on, wait a second. So you're agreeing we should level the playing field, but you're not agreeing we should do anything to get the people who are not on the level playing field yet there in the first place. It's like saying that, I don't know if you've ever done like a Super Smash Brothers tournament before, but it's like saying everybody in this tournament has an equal shot. This guy over here has been practicing under... I'm trying to think of the list of Smash Brothers competitive players who are not pedophiles now. And it's,
in the Smash Dojo. There we go. It's free. It's fine.
There we go. He's been practicing over there for years, making sure that he's got his fox down perfectly. And then you've got, like,
first time
little Timmy here, who came in after a month of he bought Melee a month ago. He's coming to the tournament. He's ready to play. He's got his Bowser ready, and then he wonders why you don't have items in Final Destination. These two do not actually have an equal shot at this tournament.
Right.
Timmy needs some training. Like, in an ideal world, this person who's been practicing for 2 years could take a couple weeks out, or even just a few hours before the tournament, and sit down with Timmy and go, "Hey, let's work on your fundamentals. You need to know how to tech. You need to know how to fight. You need to stop rolling. That's why you're dying so much." just those little things.
Starting to really get narrow into the Smash portion of the viewership.
For like the 2 Smash fans in the viewership, they're just like, yeah, I get it. But in an ideal world, you bring that person up and then go, okay, now the playing field is actually more even because everybody has an equal ability to compete now. But that's not what happens. Like, I used to be a tournament operator during Smash 4, and what actually tended to happen was your players came in because they knew that they would guarantee to be able to win money, and if they were guaranteed to be able to win money, they wouldn't train anybody because they weren't there to have a good fight. They were there to win cash.
Yeah.
And it upset me as a tournament operator because when you're having to hand over prize winnings to the same person every week, you're just like,
come on, bro.
You're just like, dude, you can take some time to just talk about it. Tell this kid to stop playing Ganondorf at least, please.
And I think they also have a problem with sort of symptoms. They don't know how to. Their order of operations is wrong. They don't PEMDAS their way through social ills. Like, they think poor people do crime. They don't think people do crime because they're poor. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like the 1350 thing, where they're just like I'm fairly certain you know what that means.
1350. Wait, is that one? Wait. Hold on. Is that the "We Must Protect Our White Children" one?
No, that's 1488.
That's 1488.
Numbers.
I forget their dog whistling number. What they actually mean, but yeah.
So 1350. I'll say the whole dog whistle.
Okay, dog whistle time.
It's time for me to say a dog whistle so that people can identify it later. Despite making up 13% of the population, African Americans are responsible for 50% of the violent crimes. That's the 1350 meme.
Yeah.
So you get people like that, and you're just like, well, hold on, wait a second. When we talk about crime, we're not talking about the bad things people have done.
Mm-mm.
We're talking about the bad things that the government says are bad, that people have been caught doing. That is what a crime is. This is not saying a violent crime is suddenly not a good thing. This is just, let's use proper framing.
Right.
When you look at the history of police work and see how much of it has been oppressive onto black people, even if we accept the FBI statistic to be correct, which it is correct, accepting that statistic instead of going and saying, now that we have this information, we can conclude black people are violent, it is instead better, I think you would agree, to look at that and go, well, why did we get here? What got us to this position where these numbers are even considered accurate?
I actually had a conversation with my mom about this, and her light bulb went off, and she's in her 60s. And she finally, when I got to the part where it's like, okay, so the civil rights happened, this is how old you were when civil rights were a thing, and black people could get, like, fucking home loans and not be fired for things. How do you the big thing is, how do you decide school funding? It was property taxes, and then she goes, that's why the schools are often getting defunded, and that's why the education sucks, and that's why some neighborhoods don't have any education, and that's why they ended up having to do some more crime than usual. And I was like, and what happens when you have a bunch of poor people that don't have any upward mobility and they're doing crime? What's the response? Well, you over police it. So now you're going to have a skewing in the data that shows, because, you know, if you have a kid stealing cookies from a cookie jar and the other kid is not stealing cookies from the cookie jar, you're going to stay up and watch and make sure that the kid doesn't steal cookies from the cookie jar. And you're going to catch that kid, but you're not watching the other kid. The other kid could be stealing just as many cookies, but you're only watching one of them. Or you're watching them more. And because you over-police and you're there more often, of course you're going to catch people tripping up more often. Especially in poor neighborhoods where, you know, you got to sell weed to get by sometimes. You got to do stuff to get by. Or you have to sell cigarettes, which is, just terrible. So we got to choke that guy out and kill him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have, they don't have money to go to the amusement park, so his mom gave him, like, a squirt gun or an airsoft rifle or whatever the fuck it was, and so he goes play in the park alone, and then he gets shot in a drive-by by the cops, you know, stuff like that. This is how that works. Like you over-police, of course you're going to catch more crime. Of course. We do crime. I crime every day, probably. I probably do one, at least speed, or like I don't have my seatbelt on when I'm on the road necessarily. I might pull out of my driveway, then put it on. That's a crime. Like, I might be looking at my phone on the road. I might be lots of driving infractions on my part. Don't drive near me. I don't know what else is illegal, but it's legal to smoke weed here, but I did it before it was legal, and I can guarantee you I wasn't worried about getting pinched by the cops. I'm very white. So,
I played Mario 64 on an emulator. I should be in jail.
Ooh, yeah. I'm actually thinking about getting a Xbox 360 emulator pretty soon.
Oh, neat. Hypothetically in Minecraft, of course.
Hypothetically in Minecraft, so I can hypothetically play some video games that I haven't been able to play a long time and that are overpriced because of the demand for them on the internet. So,
I may hypothetically be getting a Raspberry Pi system to potentially
very cool.
To potentially glue to the back of one of the monitors in my community room. But I also may hypothetically be getting a 3D printed Nintendo 64 case for it so that it will look like an N64.
Ooh, and then you can hypothetically play every single game ever made for the N64.
Yes, and
in Minecraft.
Hypothetically, you could also do it with N64 controllers that have USB outs instead of the proprietary outs, so that it feels functionally identical.
I have a Raspberry Pi, and I was thinking maybe I should get a case for it. Maybe I should. I have a buddy that has a 3D printer, and he's really good at it, and I should have him do me like a Super Nintendo or something. That'd be fun. In Minecraft.
There's a I have. So we're getting two potential systems, and I'm getting an N64 case. I'm trying to find because you can find PS2 cases and you can find Super Nintendo cases, all those. But I've not found a Raspberry Pi 360 case because I want to get that one for my partner, who ironically is also named Raz.
There you go.
She was a huge fan of a lot of older N64 and PlayStation games. And being able to play those with an old N64 controller plugged up to a 360 would just be like a tiny 360, like a 360 as big as my webcam, mind you.
Yeah,
would be cool.
Raspberry Pis are, for those who don't know, are like this big. Very cool. Also, you can use them and send them overseas, and like children in far off places with little to no access to technology can use them. They're very efficient to learn on them and stuff. That's
their operating systems do not have a giant pull on processing power, and therefore they can actually be operated in suboptimal conditions way better than the Windows laptop and much cheaper.
Maybe we should do something like that for charity.
That actually would be a pretty good idea. Send pies overseas for education.
Throw a pie. They're not actually even expensive. I think like $10, $15.
It depends. I would personally want to get them Pi 4s because more stuff is going to be developed for the Pi 4. It just came out last year. A 2 GB model wouldn't be enough. You'd probably want to give them a 4 GB RAM model, and those cost about $60.
Yeah, that's still cheap.
$80 if you get them with a full kit that comes with the power cable, a case, fan, heat sinks, everything, so they can learn how to build it. So really just call it $80 each because you want to send them the full system. You don't want to just send them a chipset and say, here you go.
That'd be really cool. You guys have a Pi? I don't have a Pi store near me now.
I have a Best Buy here and they sell pies.
I didn't know Pi stores existed. New Pi has 8 GB of RAM. That's getting beastly. I tried to put 32 gigs of RAM in my PC, and it blue screened. It was too powerful. It was telling the future, and it just couldn't deal with it.
I have an older motherboard that can't handle RAM sticks above 4 gigs each.
I just upgraded. Yeah.
Same. My current build has 32 gigs of well, actually, we'll do the PC thing where we compare builds now. It's like a dick measuring contest, only it's friendly.
Well, I had to take the other sticks of RAM out because this motherboard couldn't do it. So now it's at 16. It's RTX 2060. I have a Ryzen 7.
Okay.
I don't know what the mobile
is. That's the Ryzen 7's an octa-core, right?
Yeah, it's the 2700X. So it's
okay.
This is a very good build. This is my best one. My last one was I think an i5.
That's about what I was. I was using an i5 in my last one as well.
Yeah.
We did a 24-hour, well, not 24 hours, more like a freaking 70-something hour stream, where it was me on my PC, and then at the end of my stream, it would go to my partner, Rez, and then at the end of her stream, it would go to our partner, Aaron, and at the end of her stream, it would go to mine again.
Yeah.
And we were raising money for Black Lives Matter protests, and we found that all of our machines cannot handle streaming for that long, that often at all. It's what led us to upgrading our PCs. When OBS is telling you, hey, you dropped 84% of your frames, how do you feel about that? You're just like, maybe it's time to upgrade this machine.
This is beautiful. I really got it because I want to make the perfect cyber penis in Cyberpunk when it comes out. So and I need every pixel to be on par, 4K or whatever.
Need every thread in the processor so it can get every singular vein.
Yes. Very vascular, my cyber penis will be. And we'll be doing that here on this stream.